The accusation hit me like a sucker punch, a cold, hard blow to the gut that stole my breath. They said I cheated. They said I tampered with a rival robot, risking everything I'd worked for. But the truth was far uglier, a calculated betrayal that ripped my future from under my feet. The workshop air, usually a comforting blend of metal shavings and eager ambition, now felt thick with silent accusation. A single fluorescent light flickered above us, casting long, distorted shadows that mirrored the twisted reality I was being forced to face. I was stunned when our faculty advisor, Mr. Albright, called me into his office. "Leo," he began, his voice uncharacteristically grim, "I need you to understand how serious this is." He closed the workshop door behind us, sealing us in with the lingering scent of motor oil and the sudden suffocating weight of his words. "We've received multiple reports that you were seen near Southridge Academy's robot station right before the match." Multiple reports? My throat went dry, each beat of my heart echoing in my ears. That's impossible. I was helping Ethan with our servo alignment the whole time before. The accusations are very specific. Mr. Albright pulled out a folder, his usual encouraging smile nowhere to be found. "Someone saw you near their wiring harness. There are details about their control system that only someone with access could know." The workshop suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. I'd been so proud when they announced me as team leader just 3 months ago. Junior year, leading a team with actual seniors on it. I thought I'd earned their respect through 2 years of late nights and weekend competitions. "Sir, I swear I didn't. I have to suspend you from the team pending investigation." The words landed like physical blows. My legs felt unsteady, the floor shifting beneath me. The school board is involved now. Sabotage allegations are taken very seriously in academic competitions. State qualifiers were 3 weeks away. We'd been preparing for months, our robot finally running perfectly. Everything I'd worked for since freshman year was crumbling before my eyes. "Who made the report?" I asked, my voice thin. Mr. Albright hesitated. "I can't share that information during an active investigation." But I already suspected. Derek Sterling had been gunning for team leadership since September. Senior privilege and all that. When they picked me instead, he'd smiled and congratulated me, but something in his eyes had looked cold. "How long will the investigation take?" "Could be weeks. Maybe longer if we have to bring in outside parties to examine the evidence." Evidence? What evidence could there possibly be when I hadn't done anything? I walked out of that meeting in a daze. The hallways felt different, like everyone was staring. Word travels fast in a school this size, especially when it's about cheating allegations. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Heard about the meeting. This is insane." At least someone believed me. But Ethan was just a sophomore. His opinion wouldn't carry much weight if this went to a full hearing. The worst part was knowing our robot sat in the workshop, ready to dominate the competition, while I couldn't even touch it. Months of programming, testing, rebuilding when parts failed, staying until the janitors kicked us out. All of that was being held hostage by lies. I thought about Derek's reaction when Mr. Albright announced my leadership. He nodded like he expected it, but later, I'd caught him talking quietly to some of the other seniors. Their conversation stopped when I walked over. "Just discussing strategy for regionals," he'd said with that same cold smile. Now, I wondered what they'd really been talking about. The investigation would be thorough, Mr. Albright had promised. They'd interview team members, review security footage if it existed, maybe even bring in the other school's advisors. But investigations take time, and time was something we didn't have. I sat in my car in the parking lot, trying to process what had just happened. My phone kept buzzing with messages from teammates, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. Some would be supportive, others probably already believing the worst. The accusations were specific, Mr. Albright had said. Details about their control system that only someone with access could know. But how could anyone think I'd risk everything I'd worked for just to sabotage another team? We were good enough to win on our own merits, unless someone wanted to make sure I never got that chance. Derek had been unusually interested in the other teams during the last competition. I'd caught him hanging around their pit area, claiming he was just being friendly. At the time, I'd thought it was good sportsmanship. Now, I was starting to wonder if he'd been gathering information for a different purpose entirely. The drive home was a blur. I kept replaying Mr. Albright's words, looking for some sign that he believed me, that this was just a formality they had to go through. But his expression had been carefully neutral, the way teachers get when they're trying not to influence an outcome. My parents would want to know why I was home early. How do you explain that your dreams are being destroyed by someone you trusted? That 3 years of dedication might mean nothing because of lies. I pulled into our driveway and sat there for another 10 minutes, watching our neighbor trim his hedges like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had changed. This morning, I'd been team leader with a real shot at state championships. Now I was under investigation for something I'd never do. The worst part wasn't even the suspension itself. It was knowing that somewhere, someone was probably celebrating the fact that they'd managed to take me down with just words and whispers. But if they thought I'd just roll over and accept this, they didn't know me at all. Leading the robotics team was an honor I'd worked toward since freshman year. I thought the older members respected me. I never imagined someone from my own team would try to rip it away. When I first walked into the robotics workshop as a nervous 14-year-old, Derek Sterling was already there, a confident sophomore with steady hands and an easy way with the upperclassmen. He showed me how to use the drill press without taking my fingers off, laughed when I nearly launched a screw across the room, and became the older brother I'd never had. Robotics isn't just about building machines, he told me that first day, watching me struggle with a stubborn bolt. It's about building trust. Your teammates have to know you've got their back when the pressure hits. I took those words to heart. Through sophomore year, I stayed late to help anyone who needed it. When Maya's programming crashed the night before competition, I helped her debug code until 3 in the morning. When Ethan joined as a shy freshman, I made sure he felt welcome the way Derek had welcomed me. Derek and I worked well together. He was naturally gifted with mechanical systems, while I had a knack for programming and strategy. We complemented each other, and I genuinely thought we were friends. The team dynamics were complex, like any group of ambitious kids thrown together. The seniors usually ran things, passing down knowledge and responsibility to juniors who'd proven themselves. It wasn't democratic, but it worked. Most years, the leadership transition was smooth and obvious, but this year felt different. Our previous captain had graduated, leaving a gap that several people wanted to fill. Derek was the obvious choice to most outsiders. Senior year, 3 years of experience, well liked by everyone, including me. When Mr. Albright called the leadership meeting in September, I figured I was there to hear Derek's appointment and maybe get assigned as his lieutenant. The workshop was full of nervous energy, everyone wondering what the new hierarchy would look like. After reviewing performance, dedication and leadership potential, Mr. Albright announced, "I'm naming Leo as team captain for this season." The silence stretched for what felt like an hour. I stared at him, convinced I'd misheard. Derek was sitting 2 seats away, and I couldn't bring myself to look at his reaction. "Leo's shown exceptional commitment and has the technical skills we need for the challenges ahead," Mr. Albright continued. "Derek, I'm hoping you'll serve as senior advisor and help with the transition." That's when I finally glanced over. Derek's face was perfectly composed, already nodding and smiling. "Absolutely, sir. Leo's earned it." But something flickered in his expression, gone so fast, I almost missed it. Disappointment? Anger? I couldn't tell. After the meeting, Derek was the first to shake my hand. "Congratulations, man. You're going to do great." His grip was firm, his smile genuine. I felt a wave of relief that he was taking it well. "I'm going to need your help," I said. "You know these competitions better than anyone." "Of course. We're a team." And for the first few weeks, it seemed like we really were. Derek offered advice when I asked, helped newer members get up to speed, and never once questioned my decisions in front of the group. If he had any resentment about being passed over, he hid it perfectly. I threw myself into the role with everything I had. Leadership meant more than just knowing how to build robots. It meant keeping everyone motivated, managing personalities, and making decisions under pressure. The regional competition was our first real test, and I wanted to prove Mr. Albright had made the right choice. Our robot was coming together beautifully. The mechanical systems were solid, the programming was clean, and the team was working with a focus I'd never seen before. Even the seniors seemed to respect my authority, following my lead without the subtle pushback I'd worried about. Derek was particularly helpful during the final weeks before regionals. He volunteered for extra testing sessions, stayed late to help troubleshoot problems, and even offered to handle some of the administrative tasks I was struggling to balance with my coursework. "You're carrying a lot," he said one evening as we packed up the workshop. "Let me take some of the load." I was grateful for his support, especially since college applications were eating up my free time. Having someone I trusted handling the details made everything more manageable. The night before we left for competition, the whole team stayed late for final preparations. There was nervous excitement in the air, the kind that comes before something important. We'd worked for months to get to this point, and everyone could feel we had a real shot at placing well. Derek gave a little speech about teamwork and dedication, emphasizing how proud he was of everyone's effort. When he mentioned my leadership specifically, I felt a surge of gratitude for his maturity and support. Looking back now, I wonder if I was naive to trust those words. But at the time, surrounded by teammates who believed in our robot and our chances, betrayal was the last thing on my mind. Whispers started spreading in the workshop that I'd been too close to the other team's pit before our match. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself it was just stress talking. The first hint something was wrong came during lunch on Monday. I was sitting with Ethan and a few other underclassmen when Alex walked by our table. He'd been friendly all year, always quick with a joke or a high five when our tests went well. But today, he just nodded stiffly and kept walking. That was weird, Ethan muttered, watching Alex join a table of seniors across the cafeteria. I shrugged it off. Maybe he was having a bad day. We all got stressed during competition season. But then it happened again in AP Physics. Chloe, who'd been my lab partner since September, asked to switch to a different station. When I asked why, she just said she needed to work with someone else for a while. By Wednesday, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Conversations stopped when I entered the workshop. People found reasons to work on the opposite side of the room. Even Maya, who I'd helped save during that all-night debugging session, seemed uncomfortable around me. I cornered Ethan after school. He was the only one still acting normal, and I needed to know what was going on. Have you heard anything weird about me? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Ethan looked around nervously. There's been some talk. What kind of talk? People are saying you were hanging around Southridge's robot before the match. That maybe you knew too much about their setup. The accusation hit like a physical blow. That's insane. I was with you the whole time before. I know that, Ethan interrupted. But that's what people are saying. Who's saying it? Ethan hesitated. It started with some of the seniors. Alex heard it from someone, then Chloe. Then it just kind of spread. My mind raced back to that day at regionals. The pit area had been crowded. Teams everywhere preparing for matches. I'd walked past Southridge's station a few times, sure, but only because it was on the way to the snack bar. This is ridiculous, I said. Why would anyone think I'd sabotage another team? Some people are saying you were nervous about the competition. That maybe you thought we needed an edge. The worst part was hearing doubt creep into Ethan's voice, even though he was trying to defend me. If my closest ally was starting to question things, what did that say about everyone else? I spent that evening going over every interaction from competition day, trying to figure out how innocent movements could be twisted into something sinister. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. Thursday brought a new development. During our regular team meeting, Derek made an announcement. I know there's been some tension lately, he said, not looking directly at me. But we need to stay focused on our goals. Rumors and speculation don't help anyone. It sounded supportive on the surface, but something about his tone felt off, like he was addressing a problem everyone knew about except me. After the meeting, I tried to talk to him privately. Derek, I need to know what people are saying about me. He sighed, running fingers through his hair. Look, Leo, I've been trying to shut this down, but some people saw you near their robot area. They're putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5. I never touched their machine. I believe you, he said, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. But you have to understand how it looks. Their robot had problems right before our match, and now we're hearing you were in that area. From who? Who actually saw me do anything suspicious? It doesn't matter who. What matters is that the talk is affecting team morale. The conversation felt surreal. Here was Derek, my mentor and friend, discussing my alleged wrongdoing like it was a management problem to be solved rather than false accusations destroying my reputation. So, what do you think I should do? I asked. Keep your head down. Focus on the work. This will blow over if we don't feed into it. But it didn't blow over. Friday was worse. I walked into the workshop to find several team members huddled around Alex's workstation, their voices dropping to whispers when they saw me. Maya actually moved her project to a different table when I sat down nearby. No explanation, no acknowledgement, just a silent rejection that felt like a slap. I tried to work on code optimization, but concentration was impossible with the hostile atmosphere surrounding me. Every laugh from across the room felt like it might be aimed at me. Every whispered conversation could be about my alleged cheating. The breaking point came when I overheard Chloe talking to another girl from the team. I just think it's weird that he knew about their servo issues, she was saying. Like, How would he know that unless he'd been messing with their wiring? I stood up so fast, my chair scraped loudly across the floor. Everyone in the workshop turned to look. What servo issues? I asked Chloe directly. She turned red. I didn't mean, no. What servo issues? What exactly am I supposed to have known about? The workshop went dead silent. Chloe looked around desperately, clearly wishing she could disappear. Someone said you mentioned their control problems before the match results were announced, she finally mumbled. Who said that? But Chloe just shook her head and went back to her work, leaving me standing there like an idiot while everyone pretended to be busy. That's when I realized how carefully orchestrated this all was. Someone wasn't just spreading random rumors. They were planting specific details, creating a narrative that sounded plausible enough to gain traction. The question was, who had that kind of information and that kind of influence over the team's social dynamics? I looked around the workshop at faces I'd known for years, people I'd considered friends, and saw nothing but suspicion and distance. In just 1 week, I'd gone from respected leader to suspected cheater. And I still had no idea how to prove my innocence when I didn't even know exactly what I was being accused of. Soon, people I'd considered teammates stopped meeting my eyes and moved their projects away from mine. The rumors were working, and my credibility was slipping fast. The isolation became systematic over the next week. It wasn't just awkward conversations anymore. It was active exclusion. When I suggested modifications to our robot's gripper mechanism, the group discussion died. When I offered to help troubleshoot Alex's programming issue, he said he'd already figured it out, even though I could see error messages flashing on his screen. Monday brought the worst development yet. I arrived at the workshop to find Derek explaining a new seating arrangement. We're reorganizing workstations to improve workflow, he announced. Alex and Chloe, you'll take the programming corner. Maya, you're with the mechanical team by the windows. My usual spot, the central workstation where I could oversee everything as team leader, was conspicuously absent from his list. Where should I set up? I asked. Derek gestured vaguely toward a table in the back corner, normally used for storage. You can work back there for now. Keep the noise down since you'll be near the supply closet. The message was clear. I was being moved away from the center of operations, physically separated from the team I was supposed to be leading. I set up my laptop on the dusty table, trying to maintain some dignity while everyone else got comfortable in their new, improved positions. From my corner, I could barely see what the mechanical team was doing, let alone provide guidance or coordination. The worst part was that Derek made it seem reasonable. Workflow optimization, noise concerns, perfectly logical explanations that happened to result in my complete marginalization. Tuesday brought a new humiliation. During our regular progress review, I tried to discuss timeline adjustments for the upcoming state qualifier. Actually, Derek interrupted, I've been handling scheduling coordination. Mr. Albright asked me to take point on logistics since you're dealing with other things. Other things like the investigation that was supposedly confidential, but apparently everyone knew about. I'm still team leader, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course, Derek replied smoothly. But we all want to help shoulder the load. The meeting continued with Derek running the agenda while I sat there like a spectator. People directed questions to him instead of me. When decisions needed to be made, everyone looked to him for approval. I was watching my leadership dissolve in real time, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Wednesday was when I discovered they'd created a group chat without me. I only found out because Ethan accidentally mentioned something from the team chat about Thursday's testing schedule. What team chat? I asked. Ethan's face went pale. Oh. I thought you were in it. Apparently not. Can you add me? I don't think I can. Derek set it up. So now they were coordinating without me, making decisions about our robot while I sat in my corner table like a quarantined patient. I approached Derek after the meeting. I need to be added to the team group chat, I said. He looked genuinely surprised. There's a group chat? Ethan mentioned it. Something about testing schedules. Oh, that. Derek waved dismissively. That's just for day-to-day stuff, logistics and reminders. You don't need to be bothered with every little detail. I'm the team leader. I need to know what's being planned. Leo, you're under investigation. Maybe it's better if you focus on clearing your name instead of getting caught up in operational details. The gaslighting was masterful. He was positioning my exclusion as protection, my isolation as a favor. Thursday brought the cruelest cut yet. I arrived early to find Alex working on code that looked suspiciously familiar. Is that the pathfinding algorithm I wrote? I asked, looking over his shoulder. Derek gave me some reference code to work from, Alex said without looking up. I recognized every function, every comment structure. It was definitely my work, but my name had been stripped from the headers. That's my code, I said. Alex finally turned around. Derek said it was team property. That we needed to make sure everything was properly documented in case he trailed off. In case what? In case there were any changes to the team roster. Changes to the team roster. They were already planning for my removal. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my files, checking timestamps and version histories. Everything was there. Proof that I'd written the algorithms they were now treating as communal property. But when I tried to explain this to Alex, he just shrugged. I don't know about any of that. I'm just working with what Derek gave me. By Friday, the transformation was complete. I sat at my corner table while Derek ran team meetings, coordinated with other teams, and made technical decisions. Everyone deferred to him naturally, as if he'd always been in charge. The robot was progressing well without my direct input. That was almost the most painful part, discovering that my leadership might not have been as essential as I'd thought. During lunch, I overheard a conversation between two sophomore team members. I feel bad for Leo, one of them said. But honestly, things are running smoother with Derek handling everything. Yeah, and without all the drama and suspicion, the other replied, it was getting really uncomfortable. Drama and suspicion that I hadn't created but was being blamed for anyway. That afternoon, I made a decision. I couldn't keep sitting in the corner, watching my team function without me while my reputation crumbled. I needed to figure out who was really behind the rumors and why they were so detailed and convincing. Someone had information about Southridge's robot that they shouldn't have had. Someone was orchestrating my downfall with surgical precision. But first, I had to accept a painful truth. My teammates weren't just turning against me because of gossip. They were actively choosing to believe the worst about me, and some of them seemed relieved to have an excuse to push me out. The question was whether this was just teenage social dynamics, or if someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. Either way, I was running out of time to prove my innocence before the exclusion became permanent. When I was told I might be suspended and stripped of leadership, it felt like the ground vanished beneath me. For a moment, it seemed like my rival had won. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was grabbing books from my locker when the intercom crackled to life. Leo Miller, please report to the main office immediately. The hallway went quiet. Everyone knew that kind of announcement meant serious trouble. I could feel eyes following me as I walked toward the administrative wing, my footsteps echoing off the polished floors. Principal Evans was waiting in his office along with Mr. Albright and a woman I didn't recognize wearing a crisp business suit. Leo, this is Ms. Chun from the district office, Principal Evans said, gesturing to the woman. She's here regarding the allegations against you. The district office. This wasn't just a school-level investigation anymore. We've completed our preliminary review, Ms. Chun said, opening a thick folder. The allegations are serious enough to warrant immediate action. What kind of action? I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Effective immediately, you're suspended from all extracurricular activities pending the completion of our investigation, she said. That includes the robotics team and any related competitions. The words hit like a physical blow. State qualifiers were in 3 weeks. We'd been working toward this for months. But the team will continue under interim leadership, Mr. Albright interrupted, his voice heavy. Derek Sterling will assume captain duties. Of course. It would be Derek, the person who'd been positioning himself to take over ever since the rumors started. The person who'd been so helpful and supportive while simultaneously undermining my authority. How long will this investigation take? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Several weeks at minimum, Ms. Chun replied. We're bringing in an independent investigator to interview team members and review any available evidence. Several weeks. By then, competition season would be over. Even if I was cleared, I'd miss everything I'd worked for. In the meantime, Principal Evans added, you're not allowed in the workshop or any team spaces. You cannot contact team members about robotics-related matters. They were erasing me completely. Not just suspending me, but cutting off all contact with the people and projects that defined my high school experience. After the meeting, I walked through the halls in a daze. Word had already spread. It always did. Teachers gave me sympathetic looks. Classmates whispered as I passed, and I felt like everyone was seeing me differently now. During lunch, I sat alone for the first time in 3 years. Ethan approached hesitantly, But when other students started staring, he mumbled something about homework and left. Even my closest ally couldn't afford to be associated with me anymore. The afternoon brought a new humiliation. I walked past the workshop window and saw Derek addressing the team, standing exactly where I used to stand during meetings. Everyone was listening intently, nodding along with whatever he was saying. They looked comfortable with the new arrangement, maybe even relieved. That evening, my parents sat me down for the conversation I'd been dreading.
"The school called," my father said.
"They've explained the situation." "I didn't do anything wrong," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "We believe you," my mother replied, her voice filled with a pain that mirrored my own. "But this is serious, Leo. These kinds of accusations can affect college applications, scholarship opportunities." The weight of it all started crashing down. This wasn't just about losing team leadership or missing competitions. This could derail my entire future. College admissions committees wouldn't care about the details. They'd just see a disciplinary action for academic dishonesty. What am I supposed to do? I asked, the words raw. "We're going to hire a lawyer," my father said. "Someone who specializes in educational matters."
A lawyer?
We were talking about lawyers because of high school robotics. The situation had spiraled completely out of control. Wednesday brought the cruelest revelation yet. I was walking past the cafeteria when I overheard Derek talking to a group of underclassmen. "It's really unfortunate about Leo," he was saying. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but when someone mentioned he'd been asking detailed questions about Southridge's servo configuration, I stopped walking, every muscle tensed. Servo configuration. That was the specific detail Chloe had mentioned, the thing I supposedly knew that proved my guilt. But I'd never asked anyone about Southridge's servo setup. I barely knew what servos they were using, let alone their configuration details. "How did you know about their servo problems?" I called out, walking over to their table. The conversation stopped. Derek looked up with that same calm, composed expression he'd worn throughout this entire nightmare. "What servo problems?" he asked innocently. "You just said I'd been asking about their servo configuration. How did you know they had configuration issues?" The table went silent. I could see the gears turning in Derek's head as he realized his mistake. I think you misheard me," he said finally. "I was talking about general technical questions." "No, you specifically said, servo configuration. How would you know that unless you'd seen their setup yourself?" Derek's composure cracked slightly. "I don't know what you're trying to imply." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. How did you know about problems with their servo setup?" By now, other students were listening. Derek looked around the table, probably calculating how to recover from this slip. "Look, Leo, I understand you're upset about the investigation, but making wild accusations won't help your case." He was deflecting, turning it back on me like he'd done so many times before. But this time, I'd caught him in something concrete. "It's not a wild accusation. You just demonstrated knowledge of their technical problems that you shouldn't have, unless you'd been close enough to their robot to see the issues." "That's ridiculous," Derek said, but his voice had lost its usual confidence.
"Is it?"
"Because someone's been feeding very specific information to people making accusations against me. Someone who knew details that only someone with access could know." I could see doubt creeping into the faces around the table. For the first time since this started, people were looking at Derek with questions instead of blind trust. But Derek recovered quickly. "You're obviously desperate to blame someone else for your mistakes. This is exactly the kind of behavior that got you suspended." The group nodded, and just like that, he turned the moment back to his advantage. My brief glimpse of hope evaporated. That afternoon, I received the final insult. An email from the state robotics organization, copying the school administration. Due to the ongoing investigation into allegations of unsportsmanlike conduct, Leo Miller is prohibited from participating in any state-level robotics competitions for the remainder of the academic year. Prohibited. Not suspended pending investigation, but outright banned from the thing I'd worked toward for 3 years. I stared at the email until the words blurred. Everything I'd cared about, everything I'd built, was gone. My teammates had moved on without me. The competitions would happen without me, and Derek would get everything he'd wanted from the beginning. But something about that cafeteria conversation wouldn't leave me alone. The way Derek had slipped up, mentioned specific technical details he shouldn't have known. The way he'd recovered so smoothly, like he'd practiced deflecting exactly that kind of question. Maybe everyone else was ready to accept that I was guilty, but I wasn't ready to give up. If Derek knew details about Southridge's robot that he shouldn't have known, There had to be a reason. And if I could figure out what that reason was, maybe I could finally prove what had really happened at regionals. The investigation might be out of my hands, but that didn't mean I had to sit back and let lies destroy everything I'd worked for. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. My parents' lawyer, Ms. Davies, had been reviewing the case when she mentioned something that made me sit up straight. The venue should have security cameras, she said during our meeting. Competition spaces are always monitored for safety and insurance purposes. Security cameras. Why hadn't I thought of that before? Can we get access to the footage? I asked. We can request it through Discovery, but that could take weeks, she said. The school would have to formally request it from the venue, and there's no guarantee they'll cooperate without a court order. Weeks I didn't have. State championships were coming up fast, and even if I was eventually cleared, the season would be over. That night, I made a decision that probably wasn't smart, but felt necessary. I was going to contact the venue directly. Northside Convention Center had hosted our regional competition. I'd been there dozens of times for various events over the years. The security office was tucked away near the loading docks, staffed by people who'd seen every kind of problem imaginable. I called the next morning, trying to sound official.
Hi, this is Leo Miller.
I was part of the robotics competition you hosted a few weeks ago. I'm working with our school administration on an incident report, and we need to review some security footage from that day. The security supervisor, a guy named Mr. Ramirez, sounded bored. What kind of incident? Equipment tampering allegations. We need footage from the pit area, specifically around the Southridge Academy station. You got authorization from your school? They're preparing the formal request now, but I'm trying to get a head start on reviewing what's available.
There was a pause.
I can't release footage without proper authorization, but I can tell you if we've got coverage of that area. That would be helpful.
Let me check.
Yeah, we got cameras covering the whole pit area. Multiple angles, time-stamped. Quality is pretty good too.
My pulse quickened.
How long do you keep the footage? Standard retention is 90 days, unless there's a specific incident requiring longer storage. 90 days. That gave me a window, but not a large one. If my school submits a formal request, how quickly could you process it? Depends on what they're asking for. If it's just a few hours of footage from specific cameras, maybe a week. If they want everything from the whole day, could take longer. A week was still too long, but it was better than the timeline Ms. Davies had suggested. After hanging up, I called Mr. Albright directly. It was a risk. I wasn't supposed to be contacting anyone about the investigation, but this was too important. Leo, you know you're not supposed to be calling about this, he said when he picked up. I know, but I found out the venue has security footage. Real footage that could prove what actually happened. Mr. Albright was quiet for a moment. What kind of footage? Complete coverage of the pit area. Multiple angles, time-stamped. If someone was near Southridge's robot, it would be on camera. That's actually very helpful information. I'll contact the venue immediately. He said the district had flagged it as an academic integrity issue, so the venue agreed to prioritize the export. How long will it take?
I don't know, Leo.
These things have procedures. But I could hear something different in his voice. For the first time since this started, he sounded like he actually wanted to find the truth. Instead of just managing a problem. 3 days later, Mr. Albright called me at home.
The footage is in, he said.
Can you come to school tomorrow morning, early, before classes start? Am I allowed to see it? Ms. Chun from the district office will be here along with Principal Evans. They've agreed to let you review the relevant sections. That night, I barely slept. Everything hinged on what those cameras had captured. If the footage showed nothing useful, or if it had been somehow corrupted, this was probably my last chance at vindication. I arrived at school before sunrise. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars belonging to custodial staff and early arriving teachers. The main office was dark except for one conference room where I could see figures moving around. Ms. Chun was setting up a laptop connected to a large monitor. Principal Evans sat at the conference table with a notepad. Mr. Albright paced near the window, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. Leo, Ms. Chun said when I entered. We're going to review footage from approximately 1 hour before your team's match. The venue provided coverage from 4 different camera angles of the pit area. She clicked play on the first video. The timestamp showed 10:47 a.m., about 50 minutes before our scheduled match time. The camera angle covered the main pit area where teams were making final adjustments to their robots. There, I said, pointing to a corner of the screen. That's Southridge's station. We watched several minutes of normal activity, students working on robots, coaches conferring with team members, the usual pre-match preparation. I could see myself in the background at one point, carrying tools back to our station. Let's try camera 2, Ms. Chen said, switching angles. This camera had a better view of Southridge's specific area. We watched the same time period from a different perspective. Again, normal activity.
Nothing suspicious.
Camera 3 covered a wider angle but was farther away. Camera 4 was positioned near the entrance, mostly showing people coming and going. Let's focus on the 30 minutes directly before your match, Ms. Chen said, fast-forwarding to 11:15 a.m. That's when we saw him. Derek appeared at the edge of camera 2's view, walking casually past several team stations. He paused near a table of spare parts, picked up something small, then continued walking. That's normal, Principal Evans said. Kids share parts all the time during competitions. But I was watching more carefully. Derek's path took him directly past Southridge's station, where he stopped to look at their robot. Can you slow this down? I asked. Miss Chun reduced the playback speed. We watched as Derek approached one of the Southridge students who was working alone at their station. They talked for a moment, Derek pointing at something on the robot. Looks like he's just being friendly, Mr. Albright observed. The Southridge student walked away, presumably to get something or find a teammate. Derek remained standing next to their robot. And then he bent down next to their control system.
Stop, I said. Right there.
On screen, Derek was clearly doing something to Southridge's robot. His body position blocked most of the view, but his hands were definitely working on their wiring harness. Can you enhance that section? Principal Evans asked. Miss Chun zoomed in and played the sequence again. Derek's actions were brief but deliberate. He touched something near their servo connections, paused, then casually walked away. The whole interaction lasted less than 20 seconds. Let's see what happens next, Miss Chun said, continuing the playback. 5 minutes later, we watched the Southridge student return with a teammate. They immediately noticed something wrong with their robot. Even from the camera's distance, we could see them pointing at their control system, clearly distressed. That's when their servo problem started, I said quietly. The room was completely silent. We watched as the Southridge team tried frantically to diagnose their issue. Other students gathered around to help, but they were running out of time before the match. Let me check camera 4 for the same time period, Ms. Chun said. Camera 4 showed Derek leaving the pit area right after tampering with the robot. He walked directly toward where our team was set up, his expression calm and confident. The evidence was undeniable. I need to call the venue security immediately, Principal Evans said, pulling out his phone. We need to preserve this footage as evidence. What happens now? I asked. Ms. Chun closed the laptop. Now we conduct interviews with all parties involved, starting with Mr. Sterling. The confrontation happened that same afternoon. I wasn't allowed to be present, but Ethan texted me updates from his hiding spot near the main office. Derek's in Evan's office with his parents. Been in there for an hour. He's yelling now. Parents just left looking angry. The final text came at 4:30 p.m. Derek's being escorted out of the building. That evening, Mr. Albright called with the official update. Derek Sterling has admitted to tampering with Southridge Academy's robot. He's been expelled immediately for academic dishonesty and unsportsmanlike conduct. The state robotics organization has been notified. But what about me? I asked, my voice barely daring to hope. All charges against you are dropped. You're reinstated as team captain effective immediately. The state robotics organization formally rescinded my ban that afternoon, restoring my eligibility for the rest of the season, including state championships. The relief was overwhelming, but it was mixed with anger at everything I'd lost during the weeks of false accusations. How did he think he'd get away with it? I asked. Apparently, he thought the cameras wouldn't capture the angle he needed, and that no one would think to check security footage. He underestimated how thorough the investigation would be once people started asking the right questions. The next morning, I walked into the workshop for the first time in weeks. The team was already gathered, working on final preparations for state championships. When they saw me, the room went quiet. Then, Ethan started clapping, and gradually, everyone joined in. Even the seniors who'd been coldest during my suspension managed awkward smiles. Good to have you back, Captain, Chloe said. It felt strange being called captain again after everything that had happened. But as I looked around at the robot we'd built together, at teammates who'd learned the truth and wanted to make things right, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks.
Hope.
By morning, everyone knew the truth. The stain of Derek's rumors evaporated overnight. The transformation was immediate and complete. Word spread through school faster than the original rumors had. But this time, the story was about vindication instead of guilt. Teachers who'd been avoiding eye contact started greeting me normally again. Students who'd whispered behind my back offered awkward apologies. The best part was watching our robot perform at state championships. We'd lost weeks of preparation time during my suspension, but the team had kept working. Ironically, Derek's desperation to prove himself as captain had driven him to push everyone harder than I probably would have. Our robot was in better shape than it had ever been. We dominated the preliminary rounds, our programming running flawlessly, and our mechanical systems operating with precision. The underclassmen who'd been nervous about competing without their original captain discovered they were more capable than they'd realized. In the finals, we faced Lincoln High, a team known for aggressive defensive strategies.
But we were ready.
Months of testing and refinement paid off as our robot navigated their obstacles and completed objectives with clockwork efficiency. When the final scores appeared on the scoreboard, showing us as state champions, the celebration felt different than I'd imagined. Instead of pure joy, there was also relief. Relief that the truth had finally mattered more than rumors. Ethan tackled me in a hug that probably violated several safety regulations.
We did it, Captain.
Even the seniors who'd been so quick to doubt me during the worst of the accusations seemed genuinely happy with our success. Alex shook my hand firmly. Sorry about everything, Leo. We should have known better. Mr. Albright presented us with the championship trophy, his smile broader than I'd seen all year. This is what happens when talent meets perseverance, he announced to the cheering crowd. As I held that trophy, surrounded by teammates who'd learned to trust again, and looking out at parents and fans who were celebrating our victory, I realized something important. Derek's betrayal had been devastating. But it had also revealed who my real allies were and proven that truth eventually finds a way to surface. The championship was just a bonus. What would you have done if your entire school believed a lie about you? How far would you go to fight for your name and your future? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.